You've set up the desk, you've made the plan, you've told yourself that tomorrow, or maybe Monday, or maybe after this one thing is sorted out, you will finally start. And some part of you knows that when that day comes, you will find another reason why it is not quite the right time yet. You've been waiting to feel ready. And I'm going to tell you something that nobody in the motivation space will say. You are never going to feel ready. Not because you are broken, not because you are lazy, but because readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision. And the people who build things, real things, lasting things that changed their lives, did not build them because they felt ready. They built them because they stopped waiting for the feeling and built a system instead. That is what this video is about. Not motivation, not mindset, a system. Stay with me. Here's the waiting trap in precise detail. You have something you need to do. A project, a business, a habit, a conversation, a change, and there is a version of yourself that is ready to do it, but that version feels slightly different from who you are right now. More focused, more disciplined, more rested, more clear, and so you wait. For the weekend when you'll have more time. For the stress to clear when you'll have more headspace. For the right moment, which always seems to be just slightly ahead of where you are. And what happens? The weekend comes. And you are tired from the week, so you wait for Monday. Monday comes, and there is something else, so you wait for next week. And next week is exactly like this week, except you've lost another 7 days and accumulated 7 more reasons why now is still not quite right. Here's the cruel mathematics of waiting. Every day you wait to feel ready, you become slightly less confident that you can do the thing. Because waiting sends your brain a signal, not a dramatic signal, a quiet one. It says, this thing is dangerous enough to postpone. And the longer you postpone it, the more dangerous your brain decides it must be, until a task that was genuinely manageable at the start feels like an impossible thing that only a future, better version of you could handle. You built the monster by feeding it with time, and the only way to shrink it back to its actual size is to stop waiting for the feeling and act before the feeling arrives. This is not motivation advice. This is the anti-motivation method, and it works precisely because it does not depend on how you feel. The anti-motivation method is built on one insight. Your brain does not respond to inspiration. It responds to evidence. Every time you wait to feel ready and then don't start, your brain records that as evidence that starting is difficult. Every time you start without feeling ready, your brain records that as evidence that starting is possible. You are not managing your motivation. You are managing your brain's evidence database. And the fastest way to change what your brain believes about you is to give it new evidence immediately, today, before the feeling catches up. The system has 3 parts. The first part is this: remove the decision. The moment you have to decide whether to start is the most dangerous moment in your day. Decisions require energy, and your brain, which is always conserving energy, will look for the path of least resistance. If starting requires a decision, your brain will find a reason not to start. So remove the decision entirely. Do not decide tomorrow morning whether you will write. Decide now that writing happens at 7 a.m. at that desk for 20 minutes before anything else. The decision is made. The moment arrives, you execute. No decision required. The second part, shrink the start. B.J. Fogg, behavioral scientist at Stanford, spent years studying what makes habits stick. His finding, the start is everything. Not the habit, the start. He calls it the tiny habit, and it is almost insultingly small. 2 minutes of writing, 1 push-up, 1 paragraph, 1 email. Not because 2 minutes changes your life, but because 2 minutes of starting rewires what your brain believes is possible for you. And almost always, almost every single time, 2 minutes becomes 20. Because momentum is not something you find, it is something you create by moving. The third part, anchor the trigger. Attach your start to something that already happens reliably in your day. After I pour my coffee, I open the document. After I sit at my desk, I put my phone in another room. After the alarm goes off, I put on the shoes before I check anything. The trigger is not willpower. The trigger is a cue your environment provides automatically. And when the environment provides the cue, the behavior follows, without a decision, without motivation, without waiting. That is the system. Remove the decision, shrink the start, anchor the trigger. 3 parts, 1 outcome. You stop waiting and you start building. We have been taught that the responsible thing to do before starting is to feel prepared, to research, to plan, to organize, to feel settled. And there is a version of that which is genuinely useful. But most of the time, for most people on most days, what feels like responsible preparation is actually the brain running its most sophisticated delay tactic, because preparation has a finish line. Readiness does not. You can always find one more thing to read, one more skill to develop, one more risk to assess. Readiness is a horizon. It moves as you walk toward it. The people who shipped the product before they were ready, the person who started the business before they had all the answers, the writer who published the imperfect thing instead of waiting for the perfect one. They did not succeed despite starting before they were ready. They succeeded because of it. Because starting before you are ready means you will learn things in the first week that no amount of preparation could have taught you in a year. The market, the audience, the problem, these do not reveal themselves to people who are planning. They reveal themselves to people who have begun. Real preparation is not the feeling of readiness. Real preparation is the act of starting and letting the work teach you what you need to know. This insight sounds simple. It is not. Here is the problem with big first steps. They require matching energy. A big first step on a low-energy day is a mismatch, and mismatches produce failure, and failure produces evidence, and evidence produces the belief that you cannot do this. Here's the problem with waiting for high-energy days. Most days are not high-energy days. Most days are ordinary, and if your system only works on extraordinary days, you do not have a system, you have a wish. BJ Fogg's research shows something that should permanently change how you think about habits. People who successfully build new behaviors do not start bigger. They start smaller than feels meaningful. One sentence in the journal, not a page, one sentence. 1 minute of the workout, not 30 minutes, 1 minute. One reply to one email, not clearing the inbox, one reply. And the brain, which was bracing for the mismatch, which was building the resistance, finds nothing to resist. Because there is no threat in one sentence. There is no danger in 1 minute. And in the absence of threat, the resistance dissolves. And the work begins. And the work, once it begins, has its own momentum. You do not need to feel motivated to write one sentence. You need to write one sentence to feel motivated to write the next one. The feeling follows the action. It always has. You just have to be willing to act first before the feeling arrives and trust that it will meet you there. Here is the final truth about systems, and it is the one that separates people who change from people who don't. Plans are made on good days. On good days, you feel capable, clear, energized. The plan feels realistic because you feel like the person who can execute it. And then a hard day arrives, and you discover that the plan was written for a version of you that only exists on good days. A system is different. A system is designed for your worst day, not your best. It asks, what is the smallest, most automatic, most frictionless version of this behavior that I can execute when I am tired, overwhelmed, uncertain, and have nothing left? That is the version that gets built into the system. Because if the system runs on your worst day, it runs on every day. And every day it runs, it compounds. The writer who writes one sentence every day, even on the worst days, produces more in a year than the writer who writes 1,000 words on good days and nothing on hard ones. The person who does one push-up every single day without exception builds more consistency in 6 months than the person who does 50 push-ups when they feel like it. Consistency beats intensity every time. Not because small actions are more powerful than large ones, but because consistent small actions compound, and inconsistent large ones reset to 0. Build the system for your worst day. Run it on your best day too. And watch what happens to you over the course of a year of never having missed. I want to give you one thing to do before you close this video. Not tomorrow, not after you've thought about it, right now, in the next 60 seconds. Write down one thing, the thing you've been waiting to feel ready for. Then write down the smallest possible first step, the one that takes 2 minutes or less. Then write down what will trigger it. After what event in your day will you take that step? That is your system. 3 lines, written in 60 seconds. It is not a plan, it is not a commitment, it is not a declaration. It is evidence. The first piece of evidence that you are someone who acts before the feeling arrives. And that evidence is worth more than anything else I could tell you today. If this video gave you something real, share it with one person who is stuck in the waiting loop. Not on your story, not a repost. One specific person. A direct message. Watched this, thought of you. 2 words, maximum impact. And if you want a channel that builds these systems with you, week by week, video by video, subscribe. We are building something here, and it does not require you to feel ready. It just requires you to begin. I'll see you in the next one. Now, you have the system, but I want to make sure you have something else too. Because here's what some people discover after they build the system. They start, they run it for a few days, and then something happens. A hard week, a setback, a moment where the system breaks, and instead of getting back on track, they use the break as evidence. I tried, I stopped, I'm someone who stops. And the identity collapses back to where it was. The next video is specifically about this. It is called Why Willpower Never Works: The Psychology of Self-Change. It explains what to do when the system breaks and why the moment after a break is the most important moment in your entire process. Watch it next. It is the piece that makes everything you built today stick permanently.